You turn my tears into laughter, my heartache to love ever after. You touch me and I feel like dancing. Now I wanna sing hallelujah, Lord, you make. Hallelujah, Lord, you make. Hallelujah, all things new. You change my darkness to daylight. You turn what's all wrong to all right. You make my burden seem so light. I feel I can fly. Hallelujah, Lord, you make. Hallelujah, Lord, you make. Hallelujah, all things new. Hallelujah, Lord, you make. Hallelujah, Lord, you make. Hallelujah, all things new. I am a new creation. I am a new creation. Behold, everything old is new, thanks to you, Lord. Hallelujah, Lord.
love that feeling you get when you're at the end of a movie or TV series and it's been dark and devastating along the way, but all of a sudden there's a glimmer of hope. You know, the people you thought had lost and there was no hope for them, all of a sudden you find out, hey, they're going to make a sequel and these people are coming to be back. Or the character, the hero that you loved, you thought they had died, but really they're alive and they're in a Russian prison somewhere for some reason. You know, that feeling of just being able to hold on to hope, even in the midst of despair and darkness. We've been going through this series in Revelation called All Things New, and up to this point there's been some pretty dark things, not a lot of hope to hold on to. Last week we looked at these cycles of seven, the seven scrolls, the seven trumpets, and the seven bowls, and we've wrestled with things like, why do bad things happen to good people, and what's it like to suffer apart from God, and what about all the injustice and brokenness that's going on in the world. In the middle of that there was this little section of like a spiritual battle that's going on in Revelation 12 and 13, and when you read through that stuff, it's easy to be overwhelmed with sadness and with darkness. But we've been saying all along, the book of Revelation is a book of hope. So where does this hope come in? And well, that's where we get to in Revelation chapter 21. As we approach the end of the book, we start to see like where this is all going, this cycle of human history and development. Where's it all leading to? Revelation 21, 1 through 5 says, "And then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the old heaven and the old earth had disappeared, and the sea was also gone. And I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven like a bride beautifully dressed for her husband. I heard a loud shout from the throne saying, 'Look, God's home is now among his people. He will live with them, and they will be his people. God himself will be with them. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death or sorrow or crying or pain. All these things are gone forever.'" And then verse 5, which has been sort of our anchor verse for the series, this thing we've been looking forward to. "And the one sitting on the throne said, 'Look, I am making everything new.'" New is a beautiful word. I love the feel of like a new crisp pair of shoes on your feet, or maybe some of you like to open a new piece of tech or a new piece of gear. Maybe you're kind of old school and you still buy discs for your games and you like to unwrap them. And there's something about like the newness that we seek in things. We like something that no one else has touched, that's fresh. And there's something about that that's appealing to us. And I think that sensation that we're looking for is natural when we look out at a world of brokenness and despair and all the busted things that we see around us, to want something that seems untouched by that. And so when we get to this passage where God says, "Look, I'm making all things new," this should be an exciting, hopeful moment for us. But we need to stop and just think for a second about what this text is actually telling us. See, a lot of us, when we look at the brokenness of the world, we think about the idea of like leaving earth and going somewhere else, to go to heaven. And we have this sort of escapist mentality sometimes, this idea that like, man, I just can't wait until this world is done. God finally, puts a bow on it, wraps it up, because I'm ready for something different. I just want to escape here and go somewhere else. And so a lot of times when we talk about the afterlife or heaven or what happens when we die, we talk about like going to heaven. But what's interesting here is that the Bible says, especially here in Revelation, that God is making a new heaven and new earth, and he's bringing this city, Jerusalem, this idea of a city that's well built, he's bringing it up from heaven down to where we are. And now, instead of like this world like being destroyed or whatever else, instead it's being remade, that God is coming and remaking the earth. And it says really boldly there that God's home is now among his people. In other words, this separation, this distance that we experience now that brings this sort of despair and heartache and causes this tension inside of us, it's not there anymore. Instead, God's home is now with his people. And there's a bunch of things that are listed in Revelation 21 and 22 that don't exist in this new Jerusalem and this new reality that God is going to be making sometime in the future. The first thing we see is in Revelation 21:1 that there aren't any more seas. And you may be asking, well, what's the big deal? Like, well, I don't like boats anyway. Why does it matter there aren't any seas? But the reality is seas serve as boundaries between nations and people groups. So when we say that there's no seas, it's a symbolic way of saying, look, these things that kind of divide us, that keep us separate from people groups, aren't going to exist anymore. Later on in the same chapter, it's going to say things like in Revelation 21:25, all the nations will bring their glory and honor to the city. In other words, everyone from around the world who's a follower of Jesus will be united, and it won't matter what the color of your skin, what language you grew up speaking, how much money or access or power you had or didn't have on earth, what your background is, your ethnicity, your identity. None of those things matter, because all nations, all people groups will be unified in God. This doesn't mean that those things don't have any value. It means that those things are not the primary identifier anymore. In other words, we will be unified despite our differences, not because those differences aren't real, but because God is bigger than those differences. The other thing we see here is in verse 4, there isn't any sickness or pain. So when you think about people suffering and people being sick and needing medical attention, God's going to take care of those things. In fact, it says that God's going to wipe away the tears from our eyes. In other words, like, it's not just an arbitrary healing, like, hey, take 2 pills and call me in the morning. But no, like, God is personally involved in the healing that's coming to us. If we continue on in Revelation 21, there's some other interesting things that aren't included in heaven. In verse 22, it says, I saw no temple in the city. And we don't have like temples, but so maybe like a translation for us would be like a religious place, like a church or a monument or something like that. But there's no temple in the city. And it says there's no temple because the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are its temple. In other words, there's no need for us to go some other place to worship, because God's presence is directly with us in heaven. This separation between us and God that we sometimes feel, the strain of being distant from God that we sometimes experience in our lives, that's no more, because God's presence is among us. In verse 23 of Revelation 21, it says there was no sun or moon, for the glory of God illuminates the city, and the Lamb is its light. This reminds me of the book of Genesis. If you go back to Genesis chapter 1, the sun, moon, and stars were created a couple days later after God spoke light into existence. And there's a lot of traditions about the idea that God sustained the light of the universe without the sun, moon, and stars, and that those were a creation that weren't needed initially because God provided all the light of the world. And what we see here in Revelation is a return to the beauty of creation as God intended it. We're told that there's no evil there. There's one writer, Mark Moore, who says the New Jerusalem will lack everything that hinders us from full righteousness. In other words, all the brokenness that we tend to bring with us into our friendships and our relationships and our family and into our choices and decision making, that won't be there anymore. That God is going to make not just the world new, but us new. And so all the brokenness we tend to bring with us, we're leaving that behind. And in the next chapter, Revelation 22:23, it even says that there's no curse. In other words, all the brokenness that has existed because of human decision making and all the brokenness that we see and all the pain and heartache that we experience in the world, God is taking care of that. Now, you may be sitting there going, well, I can't wait for that to happen. I can't wait any longer. Really, right now, I just want this newness, all things new that God's going to do eventually. Why can't God do it now? But there's a different perspective that as followers of Jesus we need to adopt. Maybe somewhere along the way you've been taught the Lord's Prayer or the model prayer. And there's a phrase in there that I think is really important that sometimes is pretty misunderstood. Matthew chapter 6, verse 10, Jesus was telling his disciples, his followers, how to pray, how to talk to God, how to communicate with God. And he instructed them to say, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. See, when we get to the end of the book of Revelation, what we're reminded of here is that we are living between two realities. We live in a broken, fallen world, and we make mistakes. We're broken people who sometimes participate in the evil and injustice that we see around us, or we at least don't stand up against it. And so there's all this brokenness that is just real, and it's part of our lives, and it's everywhere. But we're also experiencing the wholeness that God is in the process of making. We are bought with a price. God has paid for us to experience newness of life. And we're kind of in between both these realities. And the whole point of the book of Revelation is when you're living in between realities. You know that God has something better in store, but you're not really seeing it and experiencing it. How do you maintain hope? Well, you maintain hope by knowing that God cares about you, that God loves you, that God suffers alongside of you, and that God is in the process of setting right all the brokenness, all the pain, all the heartache. He's personally involved in healing those things. So whatever baggage you're bringing today, whatever heartache you're bringing, whatever pain or brokenness or mistakes or poor decision making or regrets that you're bringing to the table, I want you to know that God is willing and wanting to make those things new. And not just changing them out for like a slightly better version of the brokenness that you've held on to. No, God's wiping those things away and restoring you and offering you a new relationship that ultimately one day we're going to say our presence is intimately with God. But right now we're inviting that same thing into our world. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven.
I've been anxious, I can't sleep. Worthless worries burning me. I heard the sun chase the wind till my tired spirit spins into the ground. When I try to take control, fear and terror grip my soul. I need joy, I need peace, I need rest, I need relief. I look to you and you teach me to seek your kingdom, seek your righteousness. Seek your kingdom, seek your righteousness. I will seek your kingdom, seek your righteousness. Seek your kingdom, seek your righteousness. See the ravens, they can guard. They don't have silos, trucks or barns, but our God sees their needs, and He loves them and He feeds them every day. See the lilies, how they grow. They don't work or buy their clothes, but if God, by His grace, clothes the grass with great array, then how much more is there in store? When I seek your kingdom, seek your righteousness. 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 Oh, I will seek your kingdom, seek your righteousness. Seek your kingdom, seek your righteousness. I will seek your kingdom, seek your righteousness. Seek your kingdom, seek your righteousness. Oh, I will seek your kingdom, seek your righteousness. Seek your kingdom, seek your righteousness.
Okay, we're going to do a little trivia game called Which Pratt Is That? Which Pratt is that? And basically, what you're going to do is we're going to test your familiarity with Chris Pratt and all of his films that he's done, and sometimes even quotes from him as a person. And the way this is going to work is in the chat, just drop in the correct number of the answer you want to choose, and it'll automatically tally them up here. So we're going to see how well you know Chris Pratt. Anyone feeling confident about their ability to correctly identify the quote from Pratt and which character said it? How are y'all feeling about that today? We have any big Chris Pratt fans on with us today? Anyone? How many Parks and Rec fans we got here? Any park? Nope. Hannah is not a fan. Sorry, Hannah. Are you an anti Chris Pratt, or you just like take it or leave it, Hannah? Is that? We'll see. All right. So Parks and Rec, we've got some Parks and Rec fans. Maybe we can identify some of the stuff here. So we've got stuff from Jurassic Park, Parks and Rec. We'll see what we go. So 6 out of 10, that's your confidence level 8. All right, we're ready. Okay, so our first quote that we're going to try to identify, quote number 1 for us to identify from Chris Pratt. I see you've brought sustenance for our adventure. Which character is this from? So you got to try to identify, is this Guardians of the Galaxy, Parks and Rec? We've got, I don't even, to be honest with you, I don't know where some of these characters come from. The whole oeuvre, the whole Chris Pratt oeuvre, maybe a little beyond me. Onward, I see some Onward in there. So 1, 2, 3, or 4. Is this a Peter Quill and Andy? What we got here? Okay, the correct answer, I believe, is some Barley Lightfoot. Barley Lightfoot. So those of you who dropped a 4 in there are correct. So Barley Lightfoot. Anyone like that movie? Y'all enjoy that? Has everyone seen the movie, or did you just get that from the trailer for it? Looks like a bunch of y'all got that. That's good. There will be 10 questions, Wade. 10 questions. Okay, question number 2. Okay, I'm going to get a Bowflex. I'm going to commit. I'm going to get some dumbbells. Who said this? Love how dumbbells is misspelled. So was this Parks and Rec? Was this Guardians of the Galaxy? Is this an actual Chris quote? Is this, I think Jim Preston, does anyone know where Jim Preston's from? I think that may be from Passengers, one of his other movies here. I see a lot of y'all are guessing this is a quote from Chris himself. We'll see. We will see. This is actually a Peter Quill quote. Peter Quill, so a little Guardians of the Galaxy action, I believe. So, all right, question number 3, and just a reminder, he's played several characters that exist in outer space, and so if you just keep this in mind, maybe that's a little bit helpful. Question number 3, how do I send a message to Earth? How do I send a message to Earth? Oh, a little Lego. See, there's all kinds of stuff here. So we got Peter Quill, Emmett Brakowski, Jim Preston, or Bright Abbott. Which one do we have here for question number 3? Question number 3. What's your, while we're here, what's your favorite Chris Pratt? Those of you who are Pratt fans, what's your favorite Chris Pratt film or TV character? Just, you can type out the full name so it doesn't mistake it for an answer, I think, here. Question number 4 is going to be, we got to get our correct answer. Correct answer for question number 3 is Jim Preston. Jim Preston. So question number 4 is coming up. Question number 4 is, people have told me I look like Gordon Lightfoot. People have told me I look like Gordon Lightfoot. Looks like we've got some Peter Quill fans. We've got some Andy fans from Parks and Rec. I think he does a great job in Guardians of the Galaxy as well, that whole series. But people have told me I look like Gordon Lightfoot. Is this from Chris, from Barley Lightfoot, Josh Faraday, or Sweden? From Sweden, the time he played Sweden in a film. You know, the whole nation of Sweden, obviously. Chris Pratt is the correct person to play the whole nation of Sweden. This is actually a quote from Chris himself. I guess in an interview about the movie Onward, he said that people have told him he looks like that. So, for whatever that's worth. How are y'all doing? What we got? What are our scores so far? Anyone feel confident, like they're pulling away, like they're really taking the lead here? Has anyone gotten anything perfect? Wade, you were super confident. Oh, I guess you weren't super confident. 6 out of 10. I wasn't super confident, but a lot of y'all guessed Barley Lightfoot, but that was not correct. So it looks like Elliot was the only one who got that one. Elijah, you're over. That's great. All right. Question number 5. Anything is a toy if you play with it. Anything is a toy if you play with it. Where's this quote from? Well, y'all coming in early, coming in hot on that one, like you're confident where it's coming from. Anything is a toy if you play with it. This is a Parks and Rec quote. So those of you who guessed 1 are correct. Little Parks and Rec action. All right. Our next question coming up is a fun one. This quote says, "Just so you know, this is my ship still. I'm in charge. Just so you know, this is my ship still. I'm in charge." So give you guys a little bit. It looks like everybody nailed the Parks and Rec anything's a toy question. That's good. Good job. All right. Just so you know, this is my ship still. I'm in charge. Who said that quote? Everyone feels really confident with these last two. I think maybe they're a little too on the nose, a little too easy for you there. All right. Just so you know, this is my ship still. I'm in charge is a Peter Quill quote. So it's kind of a funny scene. If you haven't seen it, don't spoil anything for you there. Just so you know, it's still my ship. Thought maybe we'd throw a couple of you off with the James T. Kirk thing, but he didn't actually play James T. Kirk. That's a different Chris, the Hemsworth, but they do share the scene that quote comes from. So, all right. So those of you who guessed Peter Quill, which I think is all of you, good job. Good job. Okay. Question number 7. There's a reason men don't wear ruffles. There's a reason men don't wear ruffles. I don't know that's like a hard and fast rule. I'm sure there's some situations where men might wear ruffles. I don't wear ruffles, but I could see a scenario where that's a thing. So where's this quote come from? That's a good call, Wade. If you haven't seen the Avengers movies at this point, I'm probably not spoiling too much, but anyway. There's a reason men don't wear ruffles. All right, this is a quote from Bright Abbott. Bright Abbott. So if you guessed 4, that's one of his more obscure roles. So if you got that one, good on you. Maybe I'll catch up some of you who are a little behind who may have guessed that one correctly. Pull you away, or it might put you farther behind if you didn't know it. Question number 8. Question number 8. This is a fun one too. All right. Question number 8. Hello, visitors from another planet. You are just as special as we are. See, that's a quote that makes me feel good. Makes me feel good about myself, about the universe, about how life is going. So I like that. So hello, visitors from another planet. You are just as special as we are. All right. Lego Movie getting a lot of love this round. And that is obviously the correct answer. Emmett Brokowski. Well done. Well done. Question number 9 is right around the corner. Everybody still feeling good? We're closing in on the end of the trivia here. Everybody feeling good about it? All right, question number 9. It's a relationship. It's based on mutual respect. That's why you and I never had a second date. It's a long quote. Long quote. It's a relationship. It's based on mutual respect. That's why you and I never had a second date. Which Chris Pratt character said that? I'm curious at this point if we're just dropping random numbers in or if we're feeling confident about where these are coming from. So some of y'all seem to be tracking pretty well with the Chris Pratt films. It's a relationship. It's based on mutual respect. That's a good life lesson right there. Don't know why the second date never turned out. I guess that depends on the movie, right? Random numbers. Good job, Hannah. You did admit pretty early on you were not super confident, right? Just copying Elliot. Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. We feeling confident that Elliot's strong with the Chris Pratt universe. So this one was from Owen Grady, so a little bit more obscure character. Yeah, some of these characters, just so you know, most of them are ones he actually played, but some of them are not. We got through a few random ones in there to throw you off. But there's a few more obscure ones in there too. Most people know the Emmett Brokowski, they know, Star-Lord, they know things like that. But yeah, some of these are a little more random. All right, last question. There's nothing funnier than a giant grown man rollerblading. There's nothing funnier than a giant grown man rollerblading. I completely agree with this quote. This is a good one. So where did this come from? Where's this Chris Pratt quote from? This quote is actually interesting. It's one of my favorite Chris Pratt characters. It is Chris Pratt himself. This is a quote. And I don't know if this came after he was like photographed rollerblading or if he was questioned for a movie role or something. But yeah, there probably is nothing funnier than a giant grown man rollerblading. I do not intend on rollerblading anytime in the near future myself. Some of y'all did really well. I like that. A lot of y'all got the Chris Pratt ones. All right, so we're going to total these up. And just a reminder, the winner, person who comes out on top today, will be getting a pizza sent to their house. So we're excited to see who did that. Wade did well. And then it looks like we have a second place here with Lanny. Looks like y'all tied. So I'm going to send, if you want to shoot me a message over, and we'll make sure we get information to get you pizzas for both of you. Appreciate y'all doing our trivia today. I do want to just also let you know we're going to be launching a new series next week. And this is a series we've actually had in the works for a few weeks now. We've been trying to figure out how we wanted to address some of the issues that are going on in the world. And a lot of us have a tendency to, when we look at like the injustice and the things going on around us that we see, to really not know how to respond. And sometimes the way we respond is just with our words online or some sharing some things. But we're going to start a new series called More Than a Hashtag. We're going to watch the trailer for it and then kind of come back and talk for just a moment or two about what it means to live out our faith in a way that our beliefs, our values, the things we say we care about are more than just a hashtag for us. They're things we actually believe in. Okay, so starting next week, we're going to be giving you some practical feedback for what it looks like to put your faith into action, to live out the things that God's called you to, and to begin to develop a faith that changes how you interact with the world, with your friends, and even changes the way you interact online and approach your voice in those kind of platforms. So we're going to hop on Zoom here in a few minutes to spend some time talking. We'd love for you to join us with that. If you need information about Zoom, message me directly, hit something up in the chat and let us know, and we'll make sure we get that out to you. But we're going to end with some discussion questions, spend a few moments just kind of talking about these in the chat section.